Jack Unterweger, a man known for dark and twisted crimes, was a man whose life story reads like a gripping thriller. As a charismatic Austrian writer, journalist, and convicted murderer, his crimes shocked Austria in the 1990s. Unterweger's life is a complicated web of contrasts, combining literary brilliance with a desire for violence. This video will tell you the fascinating story of Austria's most intriguing, but also very public serial killer. Johann Jack Unterweger was born on August 16, 1950, in Steiermark, Austria. His mother was a Viennese prostitute, and his father was an unknown American soldier. His early years were spent with his mother, whose profession exposed him to the dark underbelly of society. At the age of 3, Jack was sent to live with his abusive and alcoholic grandfather because his mother was arrested for fraud. There, he lived in poverty and misery for 7 years. Unterweger was in and out of prison for much of his youth, and he logged his first arrest at 16 for assaulting a prostitute. Over the next 9 years, he accumulated 16 more convictions, mostly for theft-related offenses, but also for pimping and sexual assaults on women. In 1974, 24-year-old Unterweger had just gotten released from prison when he met 18-year-old Margaret Schaefer and abducted her to the woods near the town of Strasshof, a small city a little east of Vienna. There, he demanded sex, which Schaefer refused. Unterweger then tied her up and assaulted the girl. Afterward, he bludgeoned her with a steel pipe and killed her by strangling her with her own bra. Later in court, he admitted his crime and told the judge, "I envisioned my mother in front of me and I killed her." Unterweger was then convicted and sentenced to life in prison in 1976. While this would normally be the end of a story about a killer, in the case of Unterweger, the murder of Margaret Schaefer just marked the beginning of his deathly activities. After his conviction, Unterweger would go on to spend several years in prison, during which time he would start his writing career and gain notoriety as a talented writer and journalist. He wrote various poems, plays, short children's stories, and an autobiography titled Purgatory: A Journey into the Prison. It was this autobiography that garnered attention and praise for its raw depiction of prison life. His literary talent was seen as a redemption story, and many influential Austrians campaigned for his early release, believing he had been rehabilitated. On May 23, 1990, after serving the required minimum of 15 years of his life sentence, Unterweger was released on parole. He quickly became a celebrity, being the guest star of television talk shows and enjoying high society cocktail parties. Driving around Vienna in a Ford Mustang with a license tag reading Jack 1, Unterweger was always dressed in the latest designer fashion and got himself a blonde girlfriend, 18-year-old Bianca Mrak, the same age as his last victim. He quickly became the poster boy for criminal rehabilitation and prison reform. Jack Unterweger was not a killer. He was an artist now. He used his newfound fame to work as a journalist and even produce documentaries about crime and prostitution. However, his new life was just a charade. Unbeknownst to anyone at the time, Unterweger killed at least 7 prostitutes within the first year of his release. All victims were strangled with their own bras, just like Schaefer. During this period, Unterweger worked as a journalist for a public broadcaster and wrote an article about these murders in which he advocated for the safety of sex workers. He accused middle-class readers of greedy voyeurism and said that mass hysteria over the crimes prevented the police from finding the killer. In June 1991, an Austrian magazine commissioned Unterweger to write about crime in Los Angeles. Unterweger took the opportunity and flew to L.A., where he stayed at the Hotel Cecil on 7th and Main, an area popular with prostitutes and close to the downtown police department headquarters. During his stay, Unterweger participated in several police ride-alongs of the city's red light districts and wrote a couple of articles focusing primarily on Hollywood prostitutes. During this period, 3 sex workers disappeared from the area. Within a month, 35-year-old Shannon Exley, 33-year-old Irene Rodriguez, and 26-year-old Peggy Booth were found dead. All 3 women were severely beaten and sexually assaulted with tree branches before they were strangled to death with their own bras. When he arrived back in Austria, Unterweger was interviewed on the radio but strangely did not mention his trip to L.A. 2 weeks later, on August 4th, the body of Sylvia Zagler was found in the woods 5 miles from Vienna. It was during this time that police were zooming in on Unterweger, thinking he might be responsible for the killings of prostitutes in and around Vienna. Unterweger, aware of the police suspicion, decided to disappear. Police tried to track Unterweger down while he was on the run through Europe and Canada. Early in 1992, Unterweger decided to lay low in a big American city and flew to Miami with his girlfriend, Bianca Mrak. While in Miami, they settled into a routine of Bianca working as a go-go dancer at Miami Gold while Unterweger worked on his defense. From Miami, Unterweger reached out to a girlfriend in Vienna asking for money. Unexpectedly, she told him that her boss at Success Magazine offered him $10,000 for an on-the-run interview. Unaware that this was a trap set up by the authorities, Unterweger took the bait. On March 5, 1992, the day of the supposed interview, Unterweger and Bianca went to collect the money from the USA Money Exchange, where they were observed by U.S. Marshals. Realizing he was being watched, Unterweger attempted to flee, but was apprehended shortly after. Afraid of California's death penalty, Unterweger didn't resist extradition and petitioned the U.S. federal court for his immediate deportation. The trial of Jack Unterweger, dubbed by Austrian media as the Trial of the Century, began on April 20, 1994. This historic trial marked the first time in Austrian history that one man faced so many counts of murder. Unterweger was accused not only of murdering 7 Austrians, but also 3 Americans and 1 Czech. Witnesses from Los Angeles and Prague were scheduled to testify, along with leading forensic scientists from Switzerland, Germany, and the U.S. During his trial, Unterweger displayed a chilling lack of remorse. Based on a psychiatric examination, Unterweger was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. On June 29, 1994, the verdict was read out for each count of murder, and Unterweger was found guilty of 9 out of the 11 counts and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole at Graz-Karlau prison. When asked if he had anything to say, Unterweger simply stated that he would appeal. Back at the district attorney's office, there was jubilation among the prosecution team since all the tension of the previous months had been released. However, the following morning brought a shocking turn of events. Austrian radio reported that Jack Unterweger had committed suicide by hanging himself in his cell at 3:40 a.m. using a makeshift noose crafted from a thin metal wire and the drawstring of his jogging pants, using the same knot that was found on all strangled sex workers. In the end, justice caught up with Jack Unterweger. His reign of terror came to an end with a guilty verdict, but the charismatic man he claimed to be was not man enough to face the consequences, as he cowardly chose to take his own life. Share your thoughts on this story in the comments, and please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories about serial killers worldwide. Until next time, and stay safe.